Hey everyone, it's Yen, and today we are going to be talking about binding. Specifically, my experiences binding and how that changed over time regarding me coming out as non-binary and transgender. This is for visibility purposes. Hopefully some of you out there have similar thought processes you're going through or relate to some of the stages that I've experienced during my ever fluctuating relationship with binding. This video is not going to talk about how to safely bind. It's not going to talk about ways to acquire binders or the history of binding. But if you think those are cool topics that I should talk about, let me know. Before we dive into the story, I have some disclaimers. I really do not want this video to be used in harmful ways. If someone has a feeling about binding one way or the other, the final outcome of that person's binding journey is really, at the end of the day, theirs. It's their autonomy, it's their body. It should center around them. And how much they want to bind or do not want to bind does not mean that you get to invalidate their expression or their gender identity. No gender, or as to my knowledge, no gender identity description says you have to bind or you must have certain physical characteristics. I don't want anyone using this video for any of those purposes. It's just a time to share. Let's start off with how I feel ideally about my chest relating to binding or not binding. Ideally, if I did not live in the context of a society, I would not bind personally. If I was on an island, I really would not care. I probably wouldn't care when I'm alone with myself. I probably wouldn't care if I was being perceived by other people. But of course, this is not the reality of how most of us live. So that's not really an option. My feelings in an ideal situation aren't really that useful to me. Before I came out, I did not like the idea of having a chest. I mean, no children really have chests when they're first born. But the reason that I did not like the idea of developing a chest is I had made observations about sexualization of female bodies, and I had made observations surrounding objectification and the sexism around it, and I was not looking forward to that. So, you know, when you're a kid, you might not say those words or call it those things, but you're watching your surroundings, you're watching how people interact, you're watching media, and you pick up on stuff. And I saw that and was like, I don't want any part in that or anything to do with it. I don't want to have to worry about it. And I was very happy as a child and was like, I don't think anything needs to change. If it were up to me, chest never would have happened, never would have developed. Moving forward towards adolescence, so middle school age, puberty hits, bras. I hated bra culture. I don't even know if that's a real term, bra culture. The point where societally you are expected to wear a bra. I hated everything about it. I didn't like how it related to policing my clothing. I didn't like how I felt like when I slept at night, you know, you gotta put this thing on and take it off to be comfortable. Oh my gosh, hold on, my cat is in my desk drawer. I have to extract her. Aiko, get out of there. Get out. If you want to see a video of my cat, let me know. Back to what I was saying. Policing my clothing, now that really depends on your environment growing up. If you're in school, what are your school rules? If you're living with family, what are family rules and expectations? Unfortunately, I just had a family situation where they were very excited for me to be feminine, to reach puberty and to grow into a beautiful woman. And I did not envision that for myself. As a very awkward teenager, as all teenagers are, I was like, I don't have a sense of style. I'm trying to develop a sense of style. I don't even know what I want to be, what I want to look like. And I do not like bras. I do not like having a chest. I do not like having to worry about it. Additionally, anxieties really started coming out relating to changing rooms and PE in public American high school. Did my voice just crack? Anyways, I know that's always awkward. Like I said, adolescence and puberty is awkward for most people. But the amount of not only anxiety, but actual hatred I had to what I identified as systems and structural expectations of me because I was female at birth, because I had a chest, was ridiculous. I was such a frustrated kid. Not only was it PE changing rooms, but again, going back to school policies, the huge emphasis on the perception of how boys in particular would perceive me. I'm pansexual, bisexual, I don't really care what label you use. I recognized very early on there was this huge emphasis on how these boys, men, were adolescents, so, what do you call them? But how they were going to be perceiving me, and de-emphasis on what makes me comfortable, what kind of clothes do I like to wear. Now, I'm not advocating to burn bras, and no one should wear a bra. I'm just explaining the context of the situation, right? I'd say a final thought about, hadn't come out yet, increasingly frustrated and upset, is relating to sexuality. I'm not going to go deep into it. I'm just going to say at that age, sexual education is not very good in the state I live in, and sexual education at home was very minimal. And so anything regarding self-confidence, consent, healthy sexual expression, none of that happened. We were operating pretty blindly there as well. And I didn't perceive my chest sexually, but everyone else in the world seemed to be making this big fuss about it and saying, well, even if you don't worry about it, you need to worry about it because other people are worrying about it. There you go. There's the stage that was set. Let's move on to while I was coming out. So I'm not going to go through my whole coming out story here. That's not what this video is about. But while I was coming out, and kind of in that process, it took many years specifically to come out to friends and family, I knew for sure that I wanted a binder. Now, I didn't always know that binders existed. I didn't know a lot about LGBT identities or community or history. But the first place I learned about binders, I was reading a story about a trans masculine individual. So I don't remember if this person in the story was a transgender man, if they were just genderqueer, but part of the story covered their feelings about binders as an option to mitigate gender dysphoria and physical dysphoria. And I was so relieved to see myself reflected in another person's thoughts and feelings. And I was so relieved that there was another option for me, because at the time the option was don't wear a bra, which wasn't an option, or wear a bra, which had its issues. I cried, and I'm not exaggerating. It was such a strong emotional reaction. I cry easily, to be fair. I'll cry at Disney movies, but I cried. It was an incredible moment, and I didn't even realize it at the time. So there you go, the power of representation and diversity in everyone's experiences, So I come out, and there's a lot of family backlash. Essentially, family was afraid that my desire to bind my chest safely was going to lead to my eventual decision, hypothetically, to get top surgery. And I would say right off the bat, binding and top surgery are two very different decisions. A binder is just a piece of cloth to compress your chest. Top surgery is a very big surgery you have to go through. It costs a lot of money. It's permanent. Well, I don't know if you could get top surgery and then have chest reconstruction. That might be a path some people have taken. I would dissuade friends and family who are concerned that maybe someone who is interested in binding, it's going to lead to top surgery. That's not a guarantee. Just listen to the person, if they're like, well, let me try binding first and see how it feels, take their word for it. Those are two very different choices. Not to mention the accessibility to both of those choices is pretty different. Most people can buy one binder off Amazon or off, preferably your friendly neighborhood LGBT plus business, or if not your friendly neighborhood business, your friendly online LGBT plus business to sell you a binder. The amount of monetary investment it takes to access top surgery as a surgery is completely different, a whole different conversation. But, you know, when things are scary, you're unfamiliar, and you've only been told one trans story your whole life, the trans story being, oh, if my child is interested in gender non-conforming expression, they're gonna wanna go move all the sliders all the way to the right and do everything. Thankfully, these days, I think we're getting better about that, and more people are recognizing and realizing the transgender experience or non-binary experience or gender non-conforming experience is not all the same. We don't all do the same things or make the same decisions or feel the same way. There's I think, a fear-mongering that, no, there's only one narrative and you have to be afraid as someone who cares for your child, you know, if we're talking about a parental perspective, that this is a slippery slope. And by invalidating your child's attempt to take their grief and their hurt and their self-hate and try and ask you for help and be vulnerable, you don't want to push them away any more than you might have unconsciously already done, unknowingly. All right, enough lecturing. Let's keep talking. So I come out, family's not really hyped about the idea of me getting a binder. I acquire a binder anyways. I don't really remember if I got a friend to buy it or if I just got one and kind of was like, I'm gonna get one, let me just have one. It was amazing. I wore it probably every single day. I wore it even at home when I didn't go to school. The confidence it felt, the gender euphoria I felt, even if visually it wasn't making a huge difference. Say I'm wearing a hoodie or a sweater, you can't tell if I'm wearing a bra or a binder or not, but it made a difference to me. Other things that improved along with that time, I started getting, therapy for gender identity, gender feelings. Eventually, I moved on to college. So let's talk about after coming out. So I left my parents' house in high school and I moved on to college. I lived on my own with roommates. Having more control over my clothing, over who I get to be friends with, who I get to talk to, people who ideally respect my, identity, helped a lot. Therapy helped a lot. And I slowly started wearing my binder less. I wore it most days, but I had the type of binder with multiple rows of hooks. So I had 3 options. I could make it a little tighter, a little looser, depending on how long I was out for or what I was feeling that day. And I do recommend a binder that's somewhat adjustable. At least that's my preference. Eventually, I started working in sports bras because I hate the wireframe and sometimes the padding was just very dysphoria-inducing. But the college campus lifestyle was a lot more active. I was walking around a campus almost every single day. I was biking, I was taking buses, different from my high school experience. And wearing the binder every day, to me, the practical use of wearing a sports bra sometimes outweighed the benefit I got from wearing a binder. Over time, gaining more control and ownership of sexuality, where I didn't feel like it was everyone telling me how I needed to behave, if I wanted to be more sexual or less sexual, or worry about what other people thought about me, or don't care about what other people think about me. That helped a lot too. So you can see here the theme, autonomy. I wouldn't say it changed how I felt in my core about binders, but obviously when you're in a situation where your autonomy is largely removed, you're gonna alter your decisions to try and compensate, either to be safe or to try and counteract the feeling that you're not being given choice and your feelings aren't being respected. After college, in present day, where I've graduated from college, I'm working a full-time job that is LGBT plus inclusive. I use my pronouns at work. They're all over my emails and Zoom calls, and I talk about my pronouns to people. I can wear what I want. It's incredible because let me think how many years have passed, like 6 years about. I almost don't wear my binder the majority of the time. Not almost, I don't actually. I do not wear my binder the majority of the time. 6 years ago, where I was wearing my binder every single day, that was unimaginable, because why wouldn't I? It gives me all these great benefits. I've just slowly over time gaining more and more independence and control over my life. For me, my relationship with binding changed. It lessened. Now, it did not go away completely. My top chest dysphoria did not go away completely. I definitely still wear my binder some of the time. Sometimes it's because I want to present more mask. Sometimes it's because I'm feeling physical dysphoria or gender dysphoria or social dysphoria, and it's a tool to help me cope with that. I have now heavily incorporated sports bras and occasionally bras. And here's the other thing about that. That also 6 years ago was unimaginable. There was so much anxiety surrounding bras, hatred aimed at bras, that I it's really incredible to think now that occasionally, once in a blue moon, if I feel a certain way, I'm feeling more, I don't want to say feminine, it makes it feel like there's too much of a binary, but I want to present a certain way, I will wear bras. And it's gotten to the point where my expression with clothing has diversified so much now that it's not attached to all this external controlling me, and it's my choice when and how I want to do it. I have a considerable amount of, I guess what you would describe as feminine clothing. Sometimes the feminine clothing you order, it's made for people who have a chest, and wearing a bra and having a chest makes the clothing fit better. That has been a very interesting journey. I could make a whole different video about how I feel about clothing. My whole life, I like to think I've really appreciated visual expression, fashion, art. But I did for a while, in the same way I hated bras, I hated certain things I associated with being trapped in being perceived as a woman. And so now that has slowly gone away, dressing up in feminine clothing to me, I don't want to say it feels like drag, because drag is a very specific thing that I don't want to, soften the meaning by using it in a more general context and have drag lose its original meaning. But when I say dressing in feminine clothing and wearing a bra feels like drag, what I mean is it feels like a performance. It's not a representation of who I am holistically as a person. It is a snapshot in how I want to present myself for that day or that event that I'm going to. And it's an artistic expression, and it's not me, it's a expression of me. So being able to separate clothing and expression from my identity, which expression is not your gender identity, those are not inextricably linked. I now am at a point in my life where I don't have to wear a binder every day, and I can wear bras, and that works for me. Now, let's talk about top surgery briefly. I've considered top surgery, not anytime soon. I couldn't afford it money-wise, but with more autonomy and getting older and having a job, and eventually I could probably save up to get top surgery if I wanted. I've thought to myself, is that something that I would be interested in? Just because I don't wear a binder every day doesn't mean that the idea of top surgery isn't somewhat appealing. It means I don't have to worry about binders and bras, actually. It just throws all of that complication out the window, and I can just exist and not have to worry about it ever again. I don't get a lot of, advantage out of having a chest, except occasionally more feminine clothes kind of fit better, and that's it. It's not enough of an advantage to write home about and be excited about. But again, the downside to top surgery is it's permanent, and it costs a lot of money, and it takes time. And I'm still considering, do I want to go back on testosterone? I'm sure thoughts will naturally develop over time as I continue to adjust and find gender euphoria in different ways. And if that's a decision I want to revisit, I can do that at any time. Thanks for joining me on my little ramble. If there are any topics you'd like me to cover related to being non-binary, LGBT+, testosterone, more topics about binding, if you want to see my cat, please let me know. I really try and look at all the comments on my channel. I know I'm a new channel, so I don't have a lot of views, but every time I get one more subscriber, I get very excited, and I really appreciate you spending your time listening to my thoughts. Hopefully I will see you soon in another video.